So we like to start with a very simple question. What is a belief that you hold very strongly, like something that you believe very strongly to your core? You're a very prolific politics person on TikTok, so you probably have a lot of things that you can talk about. Just choose one, and we can go down that rabbit hole.
Sure, we can. I mostly reside in within ethics, and I use ethics to bridge in prescribing capitalism.
That would mean that you believe in capitalism and its tenets.
Right? Yeah, I'm a capitalist.
Um, can you explain why you believe in capitalism?
Well, I mean, firstly, we would have to ask the question of like, what is man? Because well, capitalism is a political system. So what I do is that I conform a political system in which it best benefits man. So man is a person that doesn't have automatic knowledge. He has to live by reason. Reason is his basic means of survival. And if reason is his means to survival, I conform a political system that best allows him to use reason. And the only thing that's the antithesis to using reason is the initiation of force. So I predicate a system that bans the initiation of force. There's a government that does that. And if you initiate force, you go to jail. And the only way in which you can survive and become, successful in capitalism is using reason, and this is through innovation, building something, creating value, and selling it.
Can you explain the definition for you of initiating force?
Uh, sure. I would say the initiation of force would be between physical means, making man's reason inept, or you could say what's it called, paralyzed, is use of reason, in which the only choices in which he can choose from is that do as you say, or you punch me or something, for an example, I guess.
That makes sense. In this way, how does capitalism stop that initiation of force or prohibit that initiation of force in a way that other economic and governmental systems do not?
Right. So I would say other governmental systems, such as like I don't know, I don't want to be sound like a conservative, like socialism or whatever, advocates for the seizement of like private property in which you can't have the full access and utility of your private property. But the government in this particular sense under capitalism, it is police, courts, and military. So military is used to ban the initiation of force overseas, of course, protecting its citizens from irrational countries that want to invade or attempt to invade or do anything similar. The police is to be the medium here, where they're putting you in handcuffs, and when somebody calls and whatever, like, yo, this guy just punched me or something like that. The only time in which you do have the right to use and I want to be more specific, the government is providing retaliatory force, meaning that it does not initiate force, it only provides retaliatory force. So you as an individual, right, have to delegate the right to the government to retaliate using force. But it's only in certain situations where your life is in immediate danger, where you do have the right to retaliate using force. So that's the only right in which the government does have, is that us individuals, and remind you, government is a conglomerate of individuals, and the only right that we do have is to retaliate against one another, and that's why we delegate it to the government. So I already explained the police. It works just as now, but it's just a lot of the laws that are in place now would be totally removed. And then secondly, we have the court system in which we can convict somebody of a particular crime by the use of objective law.
Okay. Do you believe in sort of socialist practices being implemented into capitalism, practices like Medicare for all and college for all, which we do not have in America?
No, because I would just simply say is that you don't have a right to own the efforts of somebody else's work.
Do you believe that American capitalism can be improved in any way? Uh, and why
Well,
or not?
firstly, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's American capitalism. You can say American mercantilism or American statism. You could say it's capitalistic in the sense that if you want to put capitalism on a scale, you can say it's more oriented to capitalism, so which you can call it capitalistic, but not capitalism. But in the way we can improve American capitalism, if you want, would say starting out the schooling system first. I would say getting rid of a lot of the regulations that we have in the schools today. So for an example, since the 1960s, we have dumped $2 trillion into the schooling system, yet the academic success for just blacks or everybody in general has greatly decreased. Or another law such as the No Child Left Behind Act, which I think was implemented by, once again, LBJ in the 1960s, which it actually lowered the standards in order to blacks to catch up, but actually had the negative effects A lot of let's get rid of the powers in which the teachers unions have, because they advocate for their irrational self-interests, instead of the interests of the schooling system. A lot of the fundings that's happening is something that schools are actually overfunded, in which they advocate for unnecessary programs that hinders the learning ability of children. So, for an example, I'm placed into automotive classes, meaning that I have to learn about cars, right? And I'm obligated to do so even though I don't want to, and it's not a necessary requirement for me to graduate high school. So things like that hinders the learning ability of children. So firstly, we need to establish a proper schooling system, and I would just say privatize schools. After that, I think there would just be a lot of deregulation of the market. I don't have a step-by-step plan how to do, but the general idea to strive for is deregulating the market.
Okay. Um, if we did privatize schools, um, what are the to you? What are the pros and cons of public schooling versus privatized schooling?
Well, I mean, so pros and cons is a very weird term to use, I would say, because it's like from whose perspective. But if we're talking about from the right moral stance of like pros and cons, I would say that there is no cons, in the sense that having a private schooling system would ensure the rights of every single individual. That would be the only pro. So schools would conform, just like businesses, to certain groups and stuff like that, like kind of like McDonald's or whatever. If there's not a school in a certain area, but yet there's a lot of kids, investors would come over there and invest and say, hey, I want to make money here, therefore I'm going to put a school. If there's a high demand for it, they're going to implement a school in there and they're going to get money and stuff like that. But most people would argue, oh, how exactly would you ensure the quality of funding or anything they like? But I would give them explanations of Black America during I believe the 1950s and the 1940s, of Black American schools in which they had significantly less funding than white schools, but yet achieved higher academic grades. Because the funding isn't there, it's just the quality. The funding isn't the necessary condition. It's more the quality.
Okay. Some people would say that if you did privatize schools, the education wouldn't be as quality because the motivations of the schools would be changed from teaching the children to making money. What would your response be to that?
Well, teaching the children is actually the standard in which they get money. I mean, teachers, I mean, not teachers, but parents don't want to send their kids to schools in which they're doing absolutely awful. So the standard of making money is ensuring the quality of the education there. I was going to bring up another point, but I totally forgot. But that's the main standard in which the teachers in the school is going to make money. Make sure that the reputation is high, to make sure that their grade average is high, because there is a grade average for the whole entire school. I mean, I haven't even experienced it. I know local schools were DNF schools, and my parents didn't want me to go there. So the next closest one was a C plus school, so I went there.
Think that other government services, like libraries, for example, should also be privatized in the same way?
Absolutely.
Can you explain why for other services, and also go with other services that you think should be privatized?
Well, I mean, it's the library system, or any type of system, or any type of government system that you want to bring up as an example, is as equivalent to the schooling system. So my justification for privatizing the schooling system would be the same exact for a library, or having a privatized medical system, or having a privatized anything, right? So number one is that if one wanted to open up a private library, they would be competing for a library that is infinitely funded by the government and has no competition, and has no market incentive to upgrade their standards or quality. But I mean, the way in which libraries would work would be kind of the same. They would do library cards in which people would pay into the library, and if it's a good library and has a good quality, then people will come in and buy books. I give an example: Thomas Sowell. I mean, he went to multiple libraries at a very young age and started learning, and he's one of the greatest economists to live now.
That makes perfect sense. What are your thoughts on other systems like socialism or communism?
Well, so firstly, I think it is really hard to address socialism because it's a very rubber bullet term, you could say, that it's very stretchable. It can encompass a lot of different things. Um, But I would say the general principle of socialism is that man doesn't have the right to live for his own sake, that his work is dedicated to a collective, and I call this collectivism, which collectivism is the belief in which the collective has moral or political significance over his own life, and his own life doesn't have like moral significance over others. Now, this not means that when I say the individual has moral and political significance over the other individual, doesn't mean stomp or kill other people, do all that. What I mean by that is that he achieves his own rational happiness and fulfills his own ego. But the thing more the key essential within socialism is the private property aspect. I hold life, liberty, and private property is the three rights given, and the reason why I state private property because it's a normative requirement for life. So you have life, and then you have liberty, which is the freedom of action, which means you would need to be able to free to think. And then when you think and then analyze certain things in reality, you act upon your own rational decisions. And then when you obtain a particular goal, which a goal could be a piece of private property. So for an example, if I climb a tree to obtain an apple, right, I consider that private property because it is a product of my use of reason, right? So therefore I own that product. If it's a normative requirement for my living, if I never had private property, no other rights or can be implemented, right? You cannot build a house, you cannot eat, you cannot do anything. And socialism advocates for the subjugation of my private property towards the collective.
Okay. A lot of your arguments here are based on ethics and logic, which is seemingly not a lot of what we see online in the media. What in your background has led you to this belief system that is heavily based on logic and reasoning?
Well, firstly, I mean, I don't want to go into like the depths in which I first started in politics, but I would say that when I really got into politics, I started on economics first, which economics, logically, right? Economics is the product of a political system, right? Because if you start with economics, start with Keynesian economics, you already presuppose a political system. The question is that follows: how do you know that political system is correct? And this automatically goes into ethics, and the way you justify ethics goes into epistemology, which epistemology is the theory of knowledge. How do you know stuff? And then epistemology is the theory in which you identify certain things in reality, and the nature of reality is metaphysics. So it's kind of a hierarchy in which you have to build. So me justifying, I will get into economics soon again, but everything mostly rests upon ethics and epistemology. That's where the most crux of the debate is, because if you cannot justify your system or whatever you want ethically or morally, then I just won't accept your idea. But if people do, debate ethics and they want to debate ethics, then it goes a little bit further back into like epistemology and your theory of knowledge. Like how do you know what is actually good? And goes in a little bit into meta ethics, which is a little bit more difficult study than ethics itself. But that's where the main crux of all argumentation is, and that's where it should lies: is what is the most ethical system?
We're getting towards the end of our time here. But just quickly, would you like to touch on your experience talking to other people online and other people on TikTok? What your experience has been arguing and having conversations with them?
There is a big range, I would say. So you can come across and you'll see it. If the people who are listening, if you've been around on political TikTok for a very long time, you will notice that there has been a dramatic paradigm shift of intellect on TikTok. And this started with the I don't want to sound arrogant, but this really actually started with the Aporia account, which originally was named the Classical Liberals, and then we switched to the Neo-Austrians. Ever since we have joined on political TikTok and given our 2 cents, I think a lot of more people has been reading. A lot of more people has been dedicated to learning, theory. A lot of more people has been dedicated to learning higher conceptual arguments. Now, if you're very new to political TikTok, I warn you, because the political TikTok is very radical, and it's very intellectual. So if you're just a Trumper or you're a Bernie person, I won't advocate coming on and trying to debate and stuff like that, because you might come in contact with the wrong person, and it's not too good to debate. And lastly, I would say that uh, for the left, so maybe sometimes for the right, but mostly for the left, it seems to be that a lot of their people are depressive in a sense. Here recently, a lot of the people on the left has been diminishing off of political TikTok. Just been saying my happiness isn't there, or I've been changing as a person, da da da, da, and had just been completely leaving and stuff like that. So that's what's been happening ever since then. So yeah.